Hello everyone, we have just completed 8,500 subscribers on our YouTube channel, that is Unit of Technical Analysis, and we thought we should be giving something very special to our subscribers. So that's why we came out with something new to add up to what we have done on our YouTube channel till now. Let's say we go on Tunnel Through the Air, and this page number 52. We'll read something interesting, and probably it keeps on repeating. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month. And I sat in mine house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of Lord God fell there upon me. Now it talks about 6th year, 6th month, and 5th day of the month. So this is all okay, but where does it start from? That is the most important question that we need to ask ourselves, because he always talks about various years and maybe months and then again specific days. Let's look at the same kind of things that he has put across in Tunnel Through the Air at various places. For example, if we go further from here, on page number 55, we see over on page number 55, and it came to pass in the 12th year, in the 12th month, in the first day of the month. So again, talking in terms of years, months, and then again days, which is more of like a similar kind of pattern that we have seen on the previous page. Just like the same thing, something talking about, let's say, here it is 12th year, 12th month, and first day of the month, which has been specifically talked about. Now, maybe the month and the date is been changing. Of course, the year has also been changing. Let's say here on page number 55, we get 12th year, 12th month, first day of the month. Now, if we come to the next page number, that is 369 of Tunnel Through the Air, we read it further. He read Ezekiel 33:21, and it came to pass in the 12th year of the captivity, in the 10th month, in the 5th day of the month. Maybe probably the month is being changed over here, because on the previous page that we saw, it was page number 55, we get 12th year, 12th month, first day of the month. While over here it is 12th year of the captivity, in the 10th month, in the first day of the month. Now we are talking about various years. In that year, a specific month, and in that month again a specific day to start with. But the most important question arises over here is, where should we start from? What is the year? Probably what is the month, and what is the day that we have to consider. Now, why this becomes an important question is, let's look at when the Bible was actually been written. Now, probably if we try to search across how old is the Bible, the first books of Bible were written down around 1450 or 1400 BC. That is a long time period, even before Christ was even born. That is a long time year before that, 1500 years before Christ was even born. So this is an important note for us to understand, because these are the earliest texts that we get across from the Bible. If we check probably on all parts of Google, maybe probably the dates are something different, maybe in terms of some 100 years, but again, those are all relating to, here it is 1200 BC, again BC, but all before Christ was born. What does this exactly mean? And what are the notations that we need to take from this? Now, the first and most important thing that occurs to us is he is talking about a year from a specific point, and in that year, he has been talking about a specific month. And in that month, again, he has been talking about a specific day, which becomes our critical starting point. Now, over here, if you're talking about something which was in 1200 BC or 1450 BC, we need to look at the calendar which was during that tenure. We need to look at the calendar which was during that tenure. Now, why this is important? Now, if we check, what we get is, according to Theodore Mommsen, 1 January became the first day of the year in 600 AUC of the Roman calendar, or it is in terms of number of years that we have, it is 153 BC. It talks about 153 BC. Now we have January, which started from 153 BC or probably somewhere around 45 BC. Either it is 153 BC or 45 BC, but it was much later than the dates that we have, which is writing of the Bible in 1450 BC. Now, if it is not January, now if January as a month started from 153 BC, what was being used as the first month in 1450 BC? Because if that is, if we say that the Bible was being written before January was the first month, probably everything about the 10th month or the first month changes. And all these things would then start from that specific month and not from January. Very, very important point for us to note down, because then our calculations will start not from January, but the 10th month from that specific month. Now, let's look at what were the months which were being calculated, or maybe what is the first month which was being considered during that time frame. Now, let's look at some interesting history so that we are able to know what was the first month and where we need to consider that. January is named after Janus, the god of beginning and transitions in Roman mythology. Traditionally, the original Roman calendar consisted of 10 months, totaling 304 months. So it is like 10 months of 30 days each. So we get somewhere around 304 days. Now, what about rest of the days? Winter been considered a monthless period. So winter was like, okay, you don't have to do anything in that part, and probably winter was been not considered anything specific. The semi-mythical successor of Romulus king is supposed to have added the months of January and February so that the calendar covered a standard lunar year of 354 days. Right? So this was somewhere around changes in 713 BC, that we had 354 days. Although March was originally the first month in the old Roman calendar, January became the first month of the calendar year either under Numa or under Decemvis about 450 BC. Roman writers differ. In contrast, each specific calendar year was identified by the name of two consuls who entered office on March 15 until 153 BC, at which point they started entering office on January 1st. So, what we understand before this is March was originally the first month in the old Roman calendar. So, what do we need to start with? This becomes again an important question for us to know. So, your calculations would change if you consider March as the first month, because from the first month onwards, then you have to calculate the 10th month. You have to calculate the 10th month on the basis of March being the first month, because this is how it was previously before January was being adopted as the first month. Why? Because January came to somewhere around 153 BC. So this was much more later before the Bible was actually being written. Because before that, it was being passed on verbally from person to person, and after that, the system of writing started actually. So it should be much more older than that. But January as a month, it started in 153 BC only. So we cannot consider January as the first month specifically for Bible. If you are doing calculations of Bible, you need to consider March as the first month. Now, if March is the first month, another question arises is, why is March been considered as first month and why not something else? So for that, we need to go to something really important. Now, if you look at the olden days, everything was been calculated on the basis of this four most important days. That is 21st of March, which is spring equinox, 21st of June, that is summer solstice, 23rd of September, which is autumnal equinox, and 22nd or 21st of December, which is winter solstice. Now, starting from 21st of March to 23rd of September, this comes to somewhere around half of the year, 182, 183 days. Same way from 21st of June to 21st of December, it comes to 182 days, or half of the time frame of an entire year. The second question that we have to ask is number of days, or maybe the start of the year. Because if March is the first month, is 1st of March the first day, or 21st of March is going to be the first day? Because spring equinox is generally been considered as the first day of the month. You can consider 1st of March, but this probably your calculations would have to be adjusted accordingly. And if you consider 21st of March, that is the spring equinox as our first day, probably your calculations are to be based accordingly. Now, why it is to be considered so? Because previously, in the previous era, maybe probably when the Bible was been written, somewhere around in 1450 BC, at that time, there was nothing like a calendar. There was nothing like a calendar. Now, if there was something like a calendar, we would have got days, and probably that would have been considered the first year, and we wouldn't have something called as BCE, that is before Christ, or before Common Era and after Common Era. Something BC and BCE. So we wouldn't have been having those systems. It would have been starting from a specific day and moving further from those number of days. But because during those time period, we didn't had a specific structure of starting from this year and going further, all the calculations were being made based on the past, and we have a date which is 1450 BC. That is before Common Era actually started. Right? Because after Common Era, it was starting from first century, and then we have the dates which are there now, which are called as AD, after death, that is after Christ's death, and before his birth was been considered as BC and AD. Now it is being changed to CE and BCE. Before Common Era, that's it, and Common Era. And so this is how all the things have been there. So if we consider, we have two things. First of all, Because the Bible was been written far, far back before even Christ was been born. So we have to consider the calendar which is based on those years. And during those years, as we know, March has been the first month, and preferably 21st of March is to be considered as the first day of the month. And we have to do all the calculations because winter was not been specifically considered as a different month, or probably they were not been numbered. We can start with this first month and accordingly go for the number of months. You would be able to solve this bigger questions. Why? Because then your calculations would be appropriate on that time. So we have solved for something called as number of month and also for the number of days, because we start from that specific month which is March, and for the number of days we start from 21st of March. Now what comes from here, because Gann in his various calculations have been considered some specific date. Now let's say we look at something which is there on page number 55. What he says is, and it came to pass in the 12th year, in the 12th month, in the first day of the month. So we know that, okay, we have to calculate something in terms of number of years, which is on the 12th year, which is on the 12th year. So we have to have a starting year. From there, we can do the calculations. Let's read further what we get. Son of man, take up a lamentation of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and say unto him, Thou art like a young lion of the nations, and thou art as a whale in the sea, and thou comest forth with thy rivers, and troublest the waters with thy feet, and floodest thy rivers. Ahead, if we see from these predictions of Ezekiel's and others in the Bible, which Robert believes was a repetition of previous battles, he interpreted it to be mean that there was to be a great flood during the year 1927. Now, if he is talking about 1927 over here, if he is talking about 1927 over here, which should be technically after a specific time frame, which is 12th year, which is 12th year. So what we have to do is we have to start with a starting point which is 12 years before 1927. 12 years before 1927, and probably that would become our starting point, and probably that would become our starting point as per this specific cycles. Again, an important thing. Now, to know the further parts, we again need to know the interpretations about this important para. That is, Son of Man, take up a lamentation of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Now, not necessarily that in this Bible specifically that it is talking about Egypt as a country. It can be some other country also. Pharaoh king is probably some other person and not the king from Egypt. Thou art like a young lion of the nations. Now, lion can be talking about something in terms of zodiac also. Lion can be talking in terms of zodiac also. And thou art as a whale in the seas. Now, sea is nothing but water. A river is nothing but water. Here again, he is talking about water. So, what is water about in the zodiac? Is he talking about Aquarius, the man who is having a jar in his hand, or he is talking about the watery signs? Because he has been talking about house also. If we see on page number 52, what he says is, and it come to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the fifth day of the month, as I sat in my house. So, house is also there in zodiac, and the elders of Judah sat before me. Sat before me, that is 180 degree, that the hands of the Lord fell there upon me. So here he is talking about something in terms of astrology, where he is talking about a house and maybe elders of Judah. Elders of Judah are sitting in the house opposite to that. Now, what is this exactly? Have we to consider only this specific part, or have we to consider bigger cycles also? If we probably come on page number 8, he has been talking about bigger cycles. What are those bigger cycles? If we see, my son, war is the work of the devil, not of God. And the Bible tells us that the old dragon has to be loosed for a little season. But in the book of Revelation, we read that Satan is bound for 1,000 years. I hope I live to see that day, and I feel see you will. A few nights before you were born, I had a very strange dream. I thought I saw San Francisco and Los Angeles destroyed in 2 days by some war machine, and that one of my sons came near losing his life. But what he sees over here is probably he's talking about something in terms of 1,000 year cycle. So, do we have to consider those 1,000 year cycles, or we have to consider maybe probably smaller cycles of 100 years, 500 years, or something like that? Again, if we see on page number 82, what he says is, first of all, he has defined about bigger cycles, and he talks about something again important, 1930, 1932. But in United States, the maximum. Again, these words have been divided into two parts. Maximum, evil of the great 1,000 years, which will not be completed until 1932. So again, we are talking about a similar time frame, which is coming nearer to 1932, 1,000 years, maybe probably again doing the calculations from those parts and trying to understand the details. So this can be one of the cycles that we need to identify, talk about, discuss, and probably within that we'll be having smaller cycles which we can talk about further. So we can do one thing again, relating all these things to astrology, which again pertaining to these things. Let's say, for example, page number 52, where we see he talks about year, sixth month, fifth day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me. So here he is clearly talking about a position where he is sitting in his house while Judah, the elders of Judah, are been sitting in opposition. Is it about astrology, or is it about something different? Why? During those days there were no calendars, and they were very much dependent on the positioning of the stars, very much dependent on positioning of the stars. Now, how does this 21st of March becomes relevant to us, and what implications does it have in our studies about WD Gann, or maybe about the book Master Commodity Course that we have been currently studying? Let's look at the charts which are there in Master Commodity Course. Let's say we are talking about page number 350, which is from the book Master Commodity Course. This is the master time and price chart, which comes on page number 350 over here. And if we probably try to zoom it across, what we see is we probably see the dates which have been mentioned. Let's say, for example, November is there, December is there. This is south in terms of direction. We have degrees also, 270 degrees, 285 degrees, 300. We have the timing, degrees, and date which has been mentioned over here. So this comes to 315, 330, 345, and we have 360 degree, or maybe the 0 degree been started. And this 0 degree has been started from March 20th. This 0 degree has been started from March 20th. It is 6 a.m. early time, 360 degree, 0 degree, March 20th. So 0 degree, March 20th to be having as the starting point. If we are able to have the interpretations, probably things become much more clearer for us. So that's why studying all the things together of WD Gann are much more important. We are able to get the relevance of that because 0 degree has been considered on March 20th. And as we progress further, we go for 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, 75 degrees, 90 degrees. 90 degree again comes on maybe the north. That is the first thing. And that comes on June 20th. Of course, it is only two been seen over here, but this is 21st accordingly. And then we can go for the next dates. Let's say, for example, we go for 180 degree. 180 degree over here. This comes at 6 p.m. and this is September 21st. September 21st that we see over here. September 21st, 23rd, approximately a difference of a day or two, which is autumnal equinox. And this is opposite 180 degree to 0 degree, or 21st of March or 20th of March, whatever you consider that as. And from here, from 180 degree, you go to 270 degree. 270 degree is 12 midnight in terms of time. Direction is south, and this comes on 21st of December. So here it is 21st or 22nd of December, solstice days, equinox opposite to each other, solstice opposite to each other, 180 degree, this is 180 degree, and from equinox to solstice, this is going to be 90 degrees. Probably looking on charts, you would then be able to understand the charts in a better way and why 0 comes at a specific date, which is 20th, 21st of March, which should be technically considered as the starting day. If you probably look at the other charts also, let's say this is Master 360 degree chart. So here also north, east, west, and south, these are being mentioned. So if we look at east, which is the 0 degree, it mentions March 20th. So maybe in terms of the entire year, which is 360 degree, the days are being marked accordingly. So we have the entire 360 degree coming at 365 days that have been measured over here. That comes to as especially. You have the directions. You have the entire day starting from 6 a.m. So 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. This is the noon timing. Then it comes as 6 p.m. And over here we have the midnight. So an entire day, which is an entire cycle of 360 degrees, 24 hours is been considered over here in terms of timing. And in terms of direction, we have east, north, west, south. So entire degrees have been considered 0 degree, or maybe coming to 360 degree, an entire circle that has been done. A day starting from 6 a.m. to noon, and then 6 p.m. and coming back to midnight and again 6 a.m. So entire 360 degrees is been considered for an entire day, also for an entire year. And in terms of direction is also been mentioned. He has given a specific mention in terms of days and degrees, and you can also consider that for hours. And Gann talks about this degrees, this number of days calculation, correlation between them in tunnel through the air also. Let's look at tunnel through the air. Let's say if you look on page number 371, here it has been clearly mentioned. Cycles that a time or a season referred to in the Bible meant 360 days, that is an entire year, 360 years, 360 degrees. So days and degrees are to be used interchangeably. Now, where does this becomes very much relevant? Where does this becomes very much relevant can be again seen in Bible. Now, where do we find that correlation between degrees and years? For that, we let's say come to page number 85. And if we see on page number 85 what has been written, so this is chapter 8 on page number 85. It says about Enoch. The Bible tells us that Enoch, who was the seventh from Adam, a number generally referred to as divine, was translated to heaven for his faith to the age of 365 years. Now he's talking about 365 years. Now this is generally a bit odd that a person lives for 365 years. Our general life expectancy is somewhere around 70 years, which has been again given in this book itself. We'll talk about that later. But when it talks about 365 years, is it actually number of years, or he is talking about converting years into degrees? So let's see for that also. Now, if we talk about this in terms of number of degrees, we should be calculating that. And then he talks about maybe some other things also through degrees. Then he talks about some other things also through degrees. See, if we look on page number 371, the Bible was by scores, and man's span of life was 3 score years and 10. So score is 20, 3 into 20 is 60, and plus 10, so that is 70 years. So it has been clearly mentioned over here that a life expectancy of a person is somewhere around 70. It comes to precisely 72, and 72 as a number comes as degrees again. So when we talk about precision of the equinoxes, which takes somewhere around 25,920 years. So if we consider this precision of equinox, that is 25,920 years as 360 degrees. So what we get is 25,920. If we consider this as 360 degree and divide by 360, we get 1 degree, which is 72 years. So this has been considered as 72 years in terms of years. But if we consider it in terms of degrees, this is 1 degree of the entire precession of equinoxes. Very important point for us to know. And these are all things which have been given in the tunnel through there. Only thing is we should be looking at it logically. If we consider 70 or 72 years as a span of life of a person, we cannot have 365 as the age of a person. It should be something else which has to be considered accordingly. So these are few of the notations which we thought was important, interesting, and we as we said to you that we have completed 8,500 subscribers, so we wanted to give something special, and that's why we thought to come out with this sessions which would be interesting. Of course, we'll continue this further and try to make few more interpretations from that, because we wanted to connect these things together with the Master Commodity course. And for knowing that these things are important, one more really interesting question that I wanted to put in front of you is, if we probably look at this chart, right? So this is again a price and time chart for cotton, cocoa, coffee, eggs, and rubber, all of them together. This is WD Gann's chart. Now, one more interesting thing, which probably I wanted to put in front of you as a question, was we started with the 0 degree, we went to the 90 degree, 180 degree, and 270 degree. We started with 0 degree, we went to 90 degree, 180 degree, 270 degree. So we are able to connect this with our equinox and solstice days. We are able to connect this with our equinox solstice days, which we can see as a square. 90-degree square, which we can see these are connected as a square over here, 90 degrees. But why is the triangle or 120 days also over there? Why is a triangle also over here? Because we know about the equinox and solstice days and they have been forming as a square. So square is but obvious very important. But how does this triangle come into existence? Where are we able to get the interpretations? Are these degrees, days, or something else is what we need to find out next. Fine. So let's try to meet again and discuss these things further. And if you want to know about such interesting things, maybe want to learn from us, so please do contact us. We'll always be able to help us. Of course, that comes with certain conditions which are there. Fine. Thank you so much. Bye. Take care.